Her millionaire husband called her useless and divorced her, leaving her with only $3. But within a year, she turned that $3 into $300 million. This journey will be very special. Don't miss the end. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the channel, your home for stories that prove resilience isn't just survival, it's revolution. Before we dive in, I need a small favor. We spend hours crafting these stories to bring you the most powerful content. If this story moves you, hit that like button. And if you believe in the power of transformation, drop a comment saying, "I believe in second chances." Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're doing all the work, but someone else is taking all the credit? That's exactly where Thalia Brennan found herself. May every woman watching this find the strength to know her worth, even when the world tries to tell her otherwise. May you have the courage to walk away from what diminishes you and the vision to build something that celebrates you. If your heart resonates with this, like this video. If you believe in the power of transformation, comment "Queens Rise" right now. The conference room smelled like expensive leather and broken promises. Thalia sat perfectly still, watching her husband accept another award. The crystal trophy caught the downtown Chicago lights as Marcus Webb raised it above his head. The ballroom erupted in applause. Visionary Tech Innovator of the Year. She'd written every line of code that won him that award. 3 years perfecting the algorithm, debugging systems at 3 a.m., pitching to investors while Marcus handled business lunches with younger women. But according to the program, the innovation belonged to Marcus Webb, only Marcus Webb. Across the room, a young woman attached herself to his arm. Amber Voss, 26, marketing director, and the woman who'd been slowly replacing Thalia in every way that mattered. "Thalia," Marcus's voice was cold. "We need to talk. Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. My lawyer will be there." Something icy slithered down her spine. The next morning, Thalia sat across from Marcus in his glass office. His lawyer slid divorce papers across the table. $50,000 for 7 years of marriage. For building his business from $2 million to $50 million. Then Marcus opened his wallet and pulled out 3 $1 bills. He placed them on the contracts. "This is all you're worth, Thalia. $3. You were just a supportive wife. I built this empire. You were just there, writing code I told you to write. You're a worker bee, nothing more." Amber laughed, actually laughed. Something inside Thalia shattered. But her face remained perfectly still. She picked up the $3 bills, folded them carefully, and placed them in her purse. "You're right, Marcus. I'm just a coder. Just a worker bee." She walked to the door, paused. Without turning around, she spoke one last time. "But worker bees build hives, and queens remember everyone who tried to destroy them." Thalia walked out with $3, no job, no company, no husband. But she carried something Marcus would never understand. The burning determination to build something he could never take away. The real story was about to begin. Let me take you back, because every ending has a beginning, and Thalia's story didn't start in that cold conference room. It started in a cramped computer lab at the University of Iowa, where a young woman with calloused fingers and burning ambition taught herself to code while other students partied. Thalia Brennan grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the daughter of immigrants who ran a small electronics repair shop on Central Avenue. Her father, Dimitri, could fix anything with wires. Her mother, Soline, kept the books and managed customers who sometimes paid in cash, sometimes in promises. Money was always tight, But curiosity was abundant. At 12, Thalia took apart her first computer. At 15, she built her first website. At 18, she earned a full scholarship to study computer science and business, the first person in her family to attend college. She arrived in Iowa with 2 suitcases, a laptop held together with duct tape, and dreams so big they barely fit in her tiny dorm room. While other students struggled with basic coding, Thalia saw patterns. She understood systems the way some people understand music, instinctively, completely. Her professors noticed immediately. "You don't just write code," her algorithms professor told her junior year. "You solve problems most people don't even see yet." By her senior year, Thalia had created a basic inventory management platform for small businesses. It was rough, held together with hope and caffeine, but it worked. It solved real problems for real people. That's when Marcus Webb walked into her life. He came to campus for a career fair, representing his small tech consulting firm in Chicago. Webb Technologies was barely surviving, good at sales, terrible at execution. Marcus had charisma and connections, but his technical solutions were mediocre at best. Then he saw Thalia's portfolio. "You built all of this yourself?" Marcus asked, scrolling through her projects on his tablet. He was 31, confident, and he looked at her like she was the answer to every problem he'd ever had. "Yes," Thalia said simply. "No false modesty, just fact. How would you like to come work for me in Chicago?" His smile was warm, genuine. "I can't pay you what the big companies will offer, but I can promise you won't be just another programmer. You'll build things that actually matter." Thalia accepted within a week. Chicago felt like stepping into a different universe. The city hummed with possibility. Webb Technologies operated out of a shared workspace with flickering lights and unreliable Wi-Fi. But Marcus had vision. He understood business. He knew how to talk to clients, how to close deals, how to make people believe. And Thalia? She made those promises real. She rebuilt their entire system architecture in 6 months. She streamlined their processes, improved their products, and brought in new clients with solutions that actually worked. Within a year, revenue had doubled. Within 2 years, they'd moved to a real office and hired a team. Marcus noticed everything. How could he not? "You're extraordinary," he told her one evening as they worked late, the city lights glowing through the windows. "I've never met anyone who understands systems the way you do. You see connections other people miss." Thalia felt something warm bloom in her chest. Being seen, truly seen for her abilities, felt like sunlight after years in shadow. They started dating 3 months later. It felt natural, inevitable. They worked perfectly together. Marcus handled sales and strategy. Thalia handled innovation and execution. They complemented each other flawlessly. When he proposed 2 years later, with a modest ring he'd saved months to afford, Thalia said yes, without hesitation. She was 25, he was 34, and they were building something meaningful together. Their wedding was small, held in a community space in downtown Chicago. Thalia's parents flew in from Albuquerque, proud beyond words. Her mother cried throughout the ceremony, whispering prayers in French. Marcus's vows were beautiful. "You are my partner in every sense," he said, holding her hands. "Together, we're unstoppable. I promise to always value your brilliance, to build our future side by side, to never take your contributions for granted. You're not just my wife, you're my equal in everything." Thalia believed every single word. The first 3 years were golden. They transformed web technologies from a struggling consulting firm into a serious player in the Chicago tech scene. Thalia developed a proprietary inventory management system that revolutionized how small retailers handled stock. It was intuitive, powerful, and solved problems that major corporations had struggled with for years. Marcus handled the business side, sales, investor relations, client management. Thalia handled the technical side, development, innovation, system architecture. They were the perfect team. Their breakthrough came when a regional restaurant chain agreed to pilot Thalia's system. The results were stunning. Food waste dropped by 40%. Costs decreased by 30%. Efficiency improved across every metric. Within months, other companies were calling, begging for access to the same system. Web technologies exploded. Revenue jumped from 2 million to 15 million in 18 months. They moved into a sleek downtown office with views of the Chicago River. They hired a development team. Venture capital firms started circling. Thalia worked tirelessly, coding until 3 a.m., testing systems, troubleshooting problems, constantly improving. Every algorithm, every line of code, every innovation came from her mind and her hands. But something started shifting in those late-night work sessions. Marcus began taking investor calls without her. He started presenting at conferences alone. When tech journalists interviewed him about the company's success, he spoke about his vision and his innovation. "It's just better for branding if we have one clear face of the company," Marcus explained when Thalia questioned it. "You're brilliant with tech, babe, but I'm better with people. Let me handle the public stuff. You do what you do best. Build amazing things behind the scenes." Thalia wanted to argue, but she was exhausted. And besides, wasn't the important thing that they were succeeding together? Did it really matter who stood in the spotlight? She convinced herself it didn't. She buried herself deeper in work, letting Marcus become the public face while she remained the invisible engine driving everything forward. By year 5, Web Technologies had become a $10 million company with offices in 3 cities. Marcus was featured in business magazines as Chicago's rising tech entrepreneur. Investment firms courted him. Industry leaders sought his advice. And Thalia? Thalia was introduced at parties as Marcus Webb's wife. When she tried to discuss technical details with potential clients, Marcus would smoothly redirect the conversation, speaking over her with charming confidence. "My wife is brilliant with computers," he'd say with an indulgent smile, as if she were a hobbyist rather than the architect of everything he'd built his reputation on. The employees knew the truth. They came to Thalia with problems. The development team reported to her. The entire technical infrastructure ran on systems she'd designed. But in board meetings, investor pitches, and public appearances, Marcus spoke as if he'd created everything himself. "I developed this revolutionary platform," he'd say, gesturing to presentations filled with Thalia's work. "I saw a gap in the market and built a solution. I, always I, never we." When Thalia confronted him one night after he'd accepted an innovation award without mentioning her, Marcus looked at her with something between pity and irritation. "Don't be petty, Thalia. We're a team. Does it really matter who gets credit? We're married. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine." "But it's not," Thalia said quietly. "Your success is your success, and mine is apparently also yours." Marcus's face hardened. "You know what your problem is? You're brilliant with code, but you don't understand business. Image matters. Investors want to back a strong individual leader, not a married couple. I'm protecting our company by being the face of it. You should be grateful." The words stung because there was truth in them. Thalia wasn't comfortable with public speaking. She preferred working behind the scenes. But that didn't mean her work should be attributed to someone else. Still, she said nothing more. She went back to her computer, back to her code, back to being invisible. Until that morning in the conference room. Until those $3 bills. Until the moment everything changed. Now, here's where everything shattered. And I need you to pay close attention to this moment, because what happens next will define everything that follows. That Tuesday morning felt like drowning in slow motion. Thalia walked out of Marcus's office building into cold Chicago air that burned her lungs. The $3 bills felt like fire in her purse. She walked 6 blocks before she realized she had nowhere to go. The penthouse apartment they'd shared, Marcus's name was on the lease. The car parked in the garage, company vehicle. Everything she thought was hers had always belonged to him. She found herself at a small coffee shop on West Monroe Street, the kind of place with chipped mugs and baristas who didn't recognize tech industry executives. She ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, black coffee, for $2.85. The cashier handed her 15 cents in change. Thalia stared at the coins in her palm. $3 had become 15 cents and a cup of coffee. The mathematics of her worth, calculated and reduced. She sat in the corner booth and pulled out her phone. Her hand hovered over the contact list. Who could she call? Most of their friends were Marcus's friends first. The people she worked with were his employees. Then she saw the name. Mei-Ling Cortez. They'd been roommates freshman year at Iowa. Back when Thalia was homesick and overwhelmed. Mei-Ling had taught her how to navigate campus, how to negotiate financial aid, how to survive on ramen and ambition. After graduation, Mei-Ling had gone to Google as a software engineer, while Thalia had followed Marcus to his struggling startup. They'd stayed in touch through occasional texts and birthday messages, but life had pulled them in different directions. Thalia's finger trembled as she pressed call. "Thalia?" Mei-Ling's voice was surprised, warm. "Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you?" The dam broke. Thalia told her everything. The years of stolen credit. The divorce. The prenup. The $3. The words tumbled out in a rushed, breathless confession that probably made no sense. Mei-Ling listened to every word without interrupting. When Thalia finally stopped talking, silence stretched across the line for 3 heartbeats. Then Mei-Ling said 6 words that changed everything. "Pack a bag. I'm coming now." "Mei-Ling, you don't have to." "Shut up and pack." 90 minutes later, Mei-Ling pulled up in front of the penthouse in a Tesla that whispered money and success. She helped Thalia pack 2 suitcases with clothes, her laptop, and a small box of personal items. Everything else, the furniture, the art, the life they built, stayed behind. Marcus wasn't home. He was probably with Amber, celebrating his freedom. Mei-Ling's apartment in Lincoln Park was everything the penthouse wasn't. Warm, lived in, filled with plants and books and the smell of jasmine tea. That night, they sat on her couch drinking wine that cost more than Thalia's coffee. And Mei-Ling asked the question that mattered. "What are you going to do?" Thalia pulled out the $3 bills from her purse. She'd kept them folded, pristine. Evidence of her humiliation. "Everyone in the industry knows the truth," Mei-Ling said quietly. "I've heard people at Google talk about web technologies. They all know Marcus didn't build that system. The senior engineers call it the wife's code. They know, Thalia. Everyone knows. Knowing and proving are different things. So prove it. Mei-Ling leaned forward, her eyes intense. You built that system once. Build something better. Build something he can't steal, because it's so far beyond anything he could imagine. Thalia looked at the $3 bills in her hand. I don't have capital. I don't have resources. I have $3 and a laptop. You have more than that. Mei-Ling smiled. You have the knowledge that Marcus never possessed. He was always just the salesman. You were always the genius. And now you're free to prove it. Something ignited in Thalia's chest. Not hope. That felt too fragile. This was something harder, sharper. Purpose. That night, while Mei-Ling slept, Thalia sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She opened a new project file and stared at the blank screen. Marcus's system was good. It had made him rich. But Thalia knew its weaknesses. She'd built it, after all. She knew every limitation, every corner she'd cut because of budget constraints, every feature she'd dreamed of adding, but Marcus had deemed unnecessary. What if she built something that didn't have those limitations? What if she used AI and machine learning, technologies that barely existed when she'd created Marcus's system? What if she built something that didn't just track inventory, but predicted it? Something that learned from patterns and adapted in real time. Her fingers began to move across the keyboard. By sunrise, she had a framework. By noon, she had a prototype architecture. By evening, she had a name. Quantum Inventory Solutions, QIS. Mei-Ling found her still coding at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and pages of handwritten notes. You haven't slept, Mei-Ling observed. I don't need sleep, I need this. Thalia gestured at the screen, her eyes bright with something between exhaustion and exhilaration. Marcus said I'm just a coder, a worker bee, someone who builds what other people envision. She looked up at her friend. He's about to learn that worker bees don't just follow orders, they build entire kingdoms. The next morning, Thalia did something symbolic and slightly insane. She went to a small fabric store on North Avenue and bought $3 worth of fabric remnants, scraps of material nobody wanted. The cashier looked at her strangely when she insisted on paying with exact change, 3 $1 bills. These specific bills, Thalia said, smoothing them on the counter. She took the fabric scraps home and pinned them to Mei-Ling's wall above the makeshift desk where she'd been coding. A reminder, a promise. From scraps, something beautiful could be built. From nothing, everything could rise. Comment below. Have you ever had to start over from zero? How did you find the strength? Over the next 3 months, Thalia lived like someone possessed. She coded 18 hours a day, surviving on coffee and determination. Mei-Ling brought her food, made sure she showered occasionally, and asked only one question every few days. How's it going? And slowly, impossibly, QIS took shape. It wasn't just an inventory system. It was an AI-powered predictive platform that learned from business patterns, anticipated demand fluctuations, and optimized stock levels in real time. It was everything Marcus's system was, and everything it could never be. But having a product meant nothing without clients. Thalia swallowed her pride and started cold calling small businesses. Restaurants, boutiques, local retailers, the companies too small for Marcus to bother with. Most hung up. Some laughed. A few listened. One said yes. Rodrigo Salazar owned 3 small Mexican restaurants on the south side. He was drowning in food waste and razor-thin margins. When Thalia explained her system, offering a free month pilot, he agreed mostly out of desperation. I got nothing to lose, he said with a tired smile. If it works, great. If not, I'm already broke. Thalia installed QIS in his restaurants on a Monday. By Friday, Rodrigo's food waste had dropped by 30%. By the end of the first month, his costs were down 42%. By month 3, he was profitable for the first time in 2 years. And Rodrigo told 5 other restaurant owners, who told 10 more. Thalia's phone started ringing. Small businesses Marcus had ignored. Local shops, family operations, people who needed solutions but couldn't afford web technology's premium prices. Thalia charged them almost nothing. She just needed proof of concept. She needed evidence that her system worked, that she could do this alone, that Marcus had been wrong about everything. 6 months after the divorce, Thalia had 50 clients. 7 months in, she had 100. 8 months in, TechCrunch published an article. Mysterious new startup is disrupting inventory management for small business. They called her an unknown innovator. Marcus saw the article. He called her for the first time since the divorce. Thalia. His voice was tight. What do you think you're doing? She smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Building a hive, Marcus. Just like I said I would. She hung up. The war had begun. Success has a way of attracting attention, and not all of it is good. 9 months after the divorce, Thalia stood in a glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Chicago, presenting to venture capital investors who could change everything. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She'd practiced this pitch 300 times in Mei-Ling's living room until every word felt like breathing. Traditional inventory systems react to problems, Thalia explained, her presentation glowing on the screen behind her. QIS predicts them before they happen. Our AI learns from thousands of data points, weather patterns, local events, historical trends, even social media sentiment, to forecast demand with 94% accuracy. The 3 investors leaned forward. Richard Castellano, a silver-haired titan who'd built 2 unicorn companies. Priya Venkatesan, known for spotting disruptive tech before anyone else. And James Thornwell, the youngest partner at Apex Ventures, barely 35, but already legendary. Your current client base is impressive for bootstrapping, Priya said, studying her tablet. 147 small businesses. But that's not where the real money is. Have you considered enterprise clients? That's phase 2, Thalia replied. Small businesses gave us the data to perfect the system. Now we're ready to scale. Fortune 500 companies waste billions on inventory inefficiency. QIS can save them 30 to 40%. Who's your competition? James asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Thalia met his eyes. Web Technologies has the largest market share currently, but their system is 7 years old, built on outdated architecture. They can't integrate AI without rebuilding from scratch, which would cost them millions and years of development time. She paused, letting the next words land with weight. I know this because I built their system. I was married to Marcus Webb. I created every line of code that made him successful. Silence filled the room. Richard leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. The prenup screwed you. Completely. And now you're building his competition. I'm building his replacement. Priya laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. This is either brilliant revenge or a catastrophic conflict of interest. Which is it? Neither, Thalia said firmly. This is justice. Web Technologies is built on stolen innovation. QIS is built on transparency. Every patent is in my name. Every line of code is documented. I'm not hiding anymore. The meeting lasted 2 hours. They asked brutal questions, challenged every projection, picked apart her business model with surgical precision. When it ended, Richard stood and extended his hand. "We'll offer you $5 million for 20% equity." Thalia's heart hammered. $5 million. More money than she'd ever imagined having. But she'd learned from watching Marcus negotiate. Never accept the first offer. $3 million for 15%, she countered. "I don't need your full amount. I need partners who believe in the vision, not investors who want control." James whistled low. "You've got nerve. I've got a product that works, and a market that wants it." Thalia gathered her laptop. "You're not investing in potential. You're investing in proven results. That's worth protecting." Richard studied her for a long moment, then smiled. $3 million for 15%. "We have a deal." They shook hands. Thalia walked out of that building with funding, validation, and the financial power to truly compete. But Marcus was watching, and Marcus didn't lose quietly. 2 weeks after the investment was announced in TechCrunch, Web Technologies launched an emergency press conference. Marcus stood at a podium, looking earnest and wounded. "It has come to my attention," he said, his voice heavy with manufactured sadness, "that my ex-wife is attempting to capitalize on proprietary technology developed during our marriage. While I wish her well personally, I cannot allow intellectual property theft to go unchallenged. Web Technologies will be pursuing legal action to protect our innovations." The tech blogs erupted. Half called it a legitimate concern. Half called it bitter ex-husband syndrome. Thalia's phone exploded with messages. Investors nervous. Clients worried. Mei-Ling furious. But Thalia had been waiting for this. She'd spent the last month working with a legal team, documenting everything. Every email from the early days showing her code. Every timestamp proving her authorship. Every Git commit with her name on it. Every original notebook filled with her handwriting, dating back to before web technologies even existed. She'd built a paper trail that was bulletproof. 3 days later, Thalia held her own press conference. She wore a navy suit and stood before a room full of journalists with her documentation displayed on screens behind her. "Marcus Webb claims I stole his intellectual property," she began, her voice steady and cold. "But the evidence tells a different story." She clicked through slides, showing side-by-side comparisons. Her original code from 7 years ago. Web Technologies system that followed. Timestamps that couldn't be disputed. Handwriting analysis from 3 independent experts. "I don't just claim I built his system," Thalia said, looking directly into the cameras. "I can prove it. Every algorithm, every function, every innovation that made Marcus Webb successful. I created it. He took credit. He took profits. And when I was no longer useful, he threw $3 at me and called it my worth." She pulled the $3 bills from her pocket, now laminated and mounted on a small frame. "These $3 represent the biggest mistake Marcus Webb ever made. Not because the amount was insulting, though it was, but because it gave me the clarity to stop hiding, to stop letting someone else take credit for my brilliance, to build something that proves, definitively, who the real innovator always was." The room erupted with questions. Marcus's lawsuit quietly disappeared within a week, but the damage to his reputation was permanent. Tech blogs that had celebrated him started investigating. They found the patterns Thalia had mentioned. The way he always spoke in vague terms about vision but never technical details. The way former employees all mentioned his wife as the real technical genius. the way his innovations had suddenly stopped after the divorce. Web Technologies' stock price, they'd gone public 2 years earlier, dropped 18% in a month. 3 major clients switched to QIS, and Thalia hired 15 new developers, opened a real office, started building the enterprise version of QIS that would change everything. 10 months after the divorce, QIS reached a $50 million valuation. 1 year after Marcus threw $3 at her, Forbes published a profile titled, "The Coder Who Became a CEO, How Thalia Brennan Built an Empire from $3." The article went viral. Women in tech shared it thousands of times. It became required reading in business schools, the story of invisible genius finally visible. But the best part? The article included a photograph of Thalia in her office, the $3 bills mounted on the wall behind her desk, visible over her shoulder like a crown. Marcus called her again. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The market was speaking for her, and it was speaking very, very loudly. What would you do if someone stole credit for your work? Comment your thoughts below. Mei-Ling threw a celebration dinner at a restaurant Rodrigo had opened with the money he'd saved using QIS. The small team, 12 people who'd believed in Thalia when she had nothing, gathered around a table, toasting to victories large and small. To worker bees, Mei-Ling raised her glass, grinning. To queens who build hives, Thalia corrected, smiling. They drank to that. But Thalia knew the story wasn't finished. Marcus was wounded, not defeated. Web Technologies was struggling, but not destroyed. The final act was still to come, and this time, it would be public. It would be undeniable. It would be complete. Thalia had spent a year building her empire from scraps. Now it was time to show the world exactly what those scraps could become. 13 months after the divorce, everything came to a head at the place where it all began. A tech conference in downtown Chicago. The Midwest Tech Summit was the industry's biggest annual event. Every major player attended. Deals worth millions happened in hotel bars. Careers were made and destroyed on conference stages. Thalia was the opening keynote speaker. Marcus was in the audience. She saw him the moment she walked onto the stage. 5th row, center seat, arms crossed. Amber sat beside him, though she looked bored already, scrolling through her phone. Next to them sat Bernard, a lawyer, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Thalia's presentation was flawless. She demonstrated QIS's enterprise platform live, showing how it integrated with existing systems, how the AI learned and adapted in real time, how it could save corporations millions in the first year alone. The audience was captivated. Tech journalists frantically typed notes. Competitors leaned forward, trying to understand how she'd achieved what they couldn't. During the demo, Thalia showed a comparison chart. Generic traditional system versus QIS. The differences were staggering. 40% cost reduction, 60% improvement in accuracy, 94% customer satisfaction. Everyone in that room knew the traditional system was Web Technologies. She never said the name. She didn't have to. Then came the Q&A session. The moderator opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up across the auditorium. She answered 3 technical questions with precision and clarity that left no doubt about her expertise. Then Marcus stood up. The room went silent. Every head turned. "Thalia," he said, his voice carrying across the space with practiced confidence. "Impressive presentation. But I have a concern. Your system bears remarkable similarity to technology developed at Web Technologies, technology I created. How do you respond to accusations that QIS is built on stolen intellectual property. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Journalists' fingers flew across keyboards. Cameras swiveled toward Marcus, then back to Thalia. This was the moment, the confrontation everyone had been waiting for. Thalia smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a defensive smile. A smile that knew exactly what was about to happen. "I'm so glad you asked that question, Marcus." Her voice was calm, almost gentle, "because it gives me the opportunity to address something that's been overlooked for far too long." She clicked her remote. The presentation screen changed. Side-by-side code appeared. On the left, Web Technology's core algorithm. On the right, the original version from 7 years ago. On the right, this, Thalia said, pointing to the right screen, is code I wrote in 2018. Notice the comments, the variable naming conventions, the specific approach to the sorting algorithm. Now look at Web Technology's system, released 6 months later. The similarities were undeniable. Even non-technical people in the audience could see they were essentially identical. Now let's look at the documentation. Another click. Handwritten notes appeared on screen. Thalia's notebooks from 7 years ago, dated and time-stamped, showing every stage of the system's development. "These are my original designs, my handwriting, my concepts, verified by 3 independent forensic document experts whose reports are available in the press packet you all received." Marcus's face had gone pale. "But maybe that's circumstantial," Thalia continued. "Maybe we developed similar solutions independently. So let's look at something more definitive." The screen changed again. Email chains, code repository commits, patent applications. These are Git commits from the Web Technologies repository, showing who actually wrote the code. Every single line of the core system was committed by an account under my name. Every single line. She let that sink in. "Marcus, you asked how I respond to accusations of theft. Here's my response. I didn't steal your technology. You stole mine. For 7 years, you put your name on my work. You accepted awards for my innovations. You built a fortune on my brilliance, while telling me I was nothing but a supportive wife." The room was utterly silent. "When you divorced me, you threw $3 at me and said that was my worth. You told me I was just a coder, a worker bee, someone incapable of vision or leadership." Thalia's voice remained steady, but steel ran through every word. "You were wrong about all of it." She clicked to the final slide, a photograph of the $3 bills mounted and framed. "These $3 are now worth 300 million. That's QIS's current valuation as of this morning. We've been acquired by Quantum Data Systems for $300 million, with me remaining as CEO and majority stakeholder." Gasps rippled through the audience. Marcus looked like he'd been struck. "But this isn't about the money," Thalia continued. "This is about something more important. It's about every person who's had their work stolen, every innovator who's been made invisible, every brilliant mind told they're not enough." She looked directly at Marcus. "You didn't just divorce me, Marcus. You freed me. You forced me to prove to myself what I'd always known but been too afraid to claim. I am the visionary. I am the innovator. I am the architect of everything you took credit for." She paused, letting the moment breathe. "So thank you. Thank you for the $3. Thank you for the humiliation. Thank you for underestimating me so completely that I had no choice but to rise." The audience erupted. Not polite applause, a standing ovation that thundered through the auditorium. People were on their feet, cheering, some crying. Marcus sat frozen, Amber beside him, looking uncomfortable, Bernard already edging toward the exit. Tech journalists mobbed the front of the stage, shouting questions. Conference organizers scrambled to manage the chaos. And Thalia? Thalia stood center stage, calm and composed, watching Marcus Webb shrink into insignificance. Within 24 hours, the video went viral. 5 million views, 10 million, 20 million. $3 Queen trended worldwide. Webb Technologies' remaining clients fled. His board demanded his resignation. Investors filed lawsuits for fraud and misrepresentation. Within a week, Marcus declared bankruptcy. Within 2 weeks, Webb Technologies ceased operations. Within 3 weeks, Marcus was unemployed, facing multiple legal challenges, and had become a cautionary tale in business schools about the dangers of taking credit for others' work. And Thalia? Thalia stood in her new corner office at Quantum Data Systems, the $3 bills mounted on the wall, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because Marcus had fallen, but because she had risen. On her terms. Through her brilliance, with her name on every patent, every innovation, every success. The invisible architect had finally stepped into the light, and she was never going back into shadow again. Have you ever watched someone who underestimated you realize their mistake? Tell us in the comments. 18 months after Marcus threw $3 at her, Thalia Brennan stood at an altar. The wedding was nothing like her first. No pretense, no performance, just truth. It was held in a botanical garden on a crisp October afternoon, surrounded by people who actually knew her. Mei-Ling stood beside her as maid of honor, tears streaming down her face. Rodrigo and his wife sat in the front row. Her development team filled 3 rows, some holding tissues, others grinning like proud parents. And waiting for her at the altar was David Park. She'd met him 6 months earlier at a tech conference where she'd been speaking about ethical AI development. David ran a blockchain verification company that was revolutionizing data security. He was brilliant, kind, and when he looked at her, he saw a partner, not a possession. Their first conversation had lasted 4 hours. They debated algorithms and ethics, laughed about failed startups, and discovered they both believed technology should serve people, not exploit them. He'd asked her to dinner 3 days later. She'd said yes. Their relationship was different from everything she'd known with Marcus. David celebrated her successes without feeling threatened. He asked for her opinion and actually listened. He introduced her as Thalia Brennan, CEO of QIS, before mentioning she was his girlfriend. When he proposed, 3 months into dating, he'd done it with a business proposition. "I want to merge our lives," he'd said, smiling. "Equal partnership, shared decisions, both our names on everything that matters. What do you think?" She'd laughed and cried and said yes. Now, as she walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress she'd chosen herself, Thalia felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. David's vows were simple. "I promise to be your partner, not your manager. To celebrate your brilliance, not claim it. To build with you, never over you. To see you completely and love what I see." Thalia's vows were just as clear. "I promise to stay whole, not disappear. To let you in even when it's scary. To trust again, even though trust was broken. To build something beautiful together, not for you, not despite you, but with you, always with you." They kissed, and the small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was held at Rodrigo's flagship restaurant. He now owned 5, all thriving with QIS managing their inventory. The food was incredible. The music was live. The atmosphere was celebration without performance. During dinner, Mei-Ling stood to give a toast. 18 months ago, she said, her voice carrying across the room. I picked up my best friend from the wreckage of her old life. She had $3, a laptop, and more determination than anyone I'd ever met. She raised her glass toward Thalia. She turned those $3 into 300 million. But more importantly, she turned pain into power, invisibility into influence, silence into a voice that changed an industry. Mei-Ling's voice cracked with emotion. Thalia, you didn't just build a company. You built a movement. You showed every woman who's been erased, every innovator who's been stolen from, every brilliant mind told they're not enough. You showed them that queens don't need permission to rise. They just need to remember who they are. The room erupted in applause. Later, as Thalia danced with David under string lights, she caught sight of the gift table. Mei-Ling had placed a small frame there, the original $3 bills with a plaque that read, "Where it all began." "Any regrets?" David whispered. Thalia looked at the bills, then at her husband, then at the room filled with people who valued her. "Not a single one," she said. "Everything happened exactly as it should have. Even the pain. Especially the pain. Because pain had been her teacher. Humiliation had been her fuel. And those $3? They'd been the match that lit a fire Marcus could never extinguish." 3 months after the wedding, QIS launched its global expansion. Offices in 15 countries, 2,000 employees, enterprise clients, including 8 Fortune 500 companies. The valuation hit $500 million. Thalia was invited to speak at the World Economic Forum. She delivered a keynote about intellectual property rights and gender equity in tech that received a 10-minute standing ovation. She started a foundation called the $3 Fund that provided capital and mentorship to women entrepreneurs who'd been overlooked, underestimated, or had their work stolen. The first year, they funded 47 women-led startups. The second year, 93. Each founder received their funding along with $3 bills mounted in a frame and a note. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion. Build your empire. Prove them wrong. Marcus tried to reach out once, 6 months after her wedding. An email that arrived late at night, clearly written, after too much whiskey. "I made mistakes," it read. "I see that now. I underestimated you. I took you for granted. I'm sorry." Thalia read it twice, then deleted it without responding. He was no longer relevant to her story. He'd never really been the villain. He'd been the catalyst, the push she needed to stop hiding and start claiming her brilliance. She didn't forgive him. He hadn't earned that. But she didn't hate him either. Hate required energy she preferred to spend building. 2 years after the divorce, Thalia stood in her office at QIS headquarters. The space was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, walls lined with patents bearing her name. And there, mounted behind her desk in a spotlight, were the $3 bills. Employees who visited her office always asked about them, and Thalia always told the story. Every humiliating detail, every painful moment, every step of the climb, from $3 to 300 million. "Why keep them?" a new hire asked once. "Doesn't it hurt to remember?" "It doesn't hurt anymore," Thalia replied. "Now they remind me of something more important than pain. They remind me that transformation is possible, that underestimation can become fuel, that the worst thing someone does to you can become the best thing that ever happened." She smiled at the young woman, a brilliant coder, who reminded Thalia of herself at 23. "Those $3 taught me that my worth was never about someone else's opinion. It was always about what I knew I could build, period. One evening, 3 years after everything began, Thalia worked late in her office. David had texted that he'd pick up dinner. Mei-Ling had sent a funny meme. The development team had just deployed a major update that was already getting rave reviews. Life was good. Not perfect. Nothing ever was. But good. Real. Hers. Thalia looked at the $3 bills glowing softly in their frame. Marcus had thought he was ending her story when he threw that money. But he'd actually been writing the first line of her greatest chapter. The chapter where the invisible woman became unstoppable. The chapter where the worker bee built an empire. The chapter where $3 became proof that worth isn't given. It's claimed. Thalia Brennan had claimed hers, and she was just getting started. Listen closely, because this is important. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel small, if someone has stolen your credit, diminished your work, or told you that you're not enough, hear this. They were wrong. Your brilliance doesn't need their validation. Your worth isn't determined by their opinion. Your potential isn't limited by their vision. You are the architect of your own empire. You are the author of your own story. You are the queen who decides when to rise. And when you do rise, make it so spectacular they can't look away. Make it so undeniable they can't ignore it. Make it so complete that they become irrelevant. Not because you need revenge, but because you deserve victory. What's your $3 moment? What's the insult that could become your fuel? Share your story in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else to start building. If this story moved you, hit that like button. If it made you believe in the power of transformation, subscribe to this channel. We spend hours researching and crafting these stories to remind you that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And remember, the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's becoming so extraordinary that your doubters become footnotes. Thalia Brennan proved that. Now, it's your turn. Build your empire. Claim your crown. Rise.